What's good? It's your boy Hold It Down Jay. Thank y'all for tuning in again. Before we even begin, I'm gonna need y'all to like, share, subscribe, and comment. This is the only way that I could keep helping y'all and get the message out to more people trying to get inside cybersecurity. With that being said, it's a lot of people out here struggling wanting to get inside cybersecurity, and they keep asking me the same question. ALJ, how do I get inside cybersecurity and I don't have a degree? Do I need a bachelor's degree? Do I need a degree to get inside cybersecurity? Well, I have an answer to that. And the answer is no. However, if you do have a degree, it does help. I'm not gonna act like it doesn't. I personally have multiple degrees inside cybersecurity, but we about to get into all that. Now, with that being said, if you follow me on LinkedIn, last weekend I went to go see my dad, and yeah, he graduated with his bachelor's degree. It's a perfect example. This is why I'm doing this video. This man been in the game for 20 plus years. He's a senior network security engineer, very passionate about his career. He does his thing. And one thing that I realized is that after all these years, he's just now getting his degree. This is not to belittle him or anything like that, but I say this to say that this man has achieved the top of the top. Like, he pretty much maxed out, and something inside of him told us as his kids and was just like, yo, no matter what, you're never too old to not learn anything. And that was one of the most valuable things I could have learned. Looking at that, I'm gonna just tell you his credentials, right? He had a CISSP. He was even a manager at a college before, and he didn't even have his degree. He was working on it. That's the crazy part. So when I say that you don't need a degree for certain things, you don't need it. What he did was he was consistent with his certifications. Back then, when he first started, they didn't have the hands-on labs that we have now, but he still found a way. One of my dad's greatest strengths is that he's definitely like a networker, right? No pun intended, right? Of course, he know how to configure different wireless access points and all that, and etc. He definitely knows how to talk to people. He knows how to go inside of a room and go talk to people and show up at conferences and tech events and stuff, because that's what's going to help you out. Okay, but enough of my pops. I just want to talk to you now about exactly how do you do it without a degree. And then I'm going to talk about, if you do get a degree, where it can benefit you, okay? So let's say you're young, and I talked about this in my previous video, so some of these topics might overlap. I tell everybody, if you have no experience, but also you don't want to go to college, at least right now, I always encourage people, look at the military, man, or some type of government sector. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of times, especially government contractors and etc., a lot of times they'll say, oh, if you get a security plus, we'll pay for your clearance and you could go ahead and work in a private sector as a government contract. But the thing is that what I will say is that look at I think it's a DoD regulation, right? It's a DoD, Department of Defense regulation, and it tells exactly what certifications are compliant for what you're going for. So for example, a lot of times it's used like a security plus, network plus. It's based off what you're going for, right? You could take that way. But what I will say is that if somebody has more experience, a lot of times they'll probably take that person over you, be honest, right? That's why I say one of the easiest things you can do is go in the military, bro. Because what you don't realize is that as long as you can be fit and you pass the ASVAB, which is the test to get you inside the military, make sure you just score high enough to get a cybersecurity job. Because here's the beautiful part. The people say, oh, I don't want to cut my hair and it takes so long and etc. Listen, knock all that noise out, stay focused, put your blinders on. The reason why I say that is because you have to look at the main mission of what you're trying to do, right? All you got to do is sign up for 4 years, and literally you get an experience as you're in. And plus they paying for your college, and they give you housing allowance if you do active duty. It's a win-win situation. Now, if you are the type of person who like, oh, yes, you're signed to a contract and etc. Listen, there's no such thing as getting something you really want without some type of sacrifice. Whether you're a civilian or a military person, listen, you're gonna have to do some type of sacrifice. I devoted 7 years in the military, but what I will say is that it was probably some of the best decisions I could have made, because at first I was going to go to college at first. And what I realized is that, you know what I mean? Like, these colleges, man, they are very expensive. Do you just have $30,000 a year laying around? And that's just average. It's not even if you go to an actual, like, a big university. And if you go to a private college, forget it. You done. So that's what I mean. Take advantage. My main advice I would give to you is that try to get as much success as possible inside the game without spending your own money. OPM, other people's money. You know what I mean? I didn't spend a dime on college. I had the government pay for everything. They took 7 years out of me working. Well, I can't take anything from them. You see the trade-off? Don't ever work for something without getting something in return. That's what I will say about that. You did your military thing. You got them to pay for where you can get a certification like a security plus. That's usually like the standard when starting out. A lot of people, they say, oh, what about IT plus and etc. Here's my preference, and here's what I'll say with that. There's a lot of like super beginner friendly. No, my bad. I didn't mean to say IT plus. I meant to say A plus certification. What I will say, my advice is to yes, understand what exactly the A plus represents. It talks about the computer infrastructure and etc. Just read on it. Make sure you get a good understanding about it. But what I say, get the certification. I wouldn't. I personally wouldn't. I would say learn enough out of the A plus and then go straight to either network plus or security plus. It's based on what you want to go for and which your avenue is. Another thing I will say is don't be so picky at this time either, because what I will say is that a lot of times, if you do have a degree, a lot of these job preferences, they'll say at least 6 years of experience or a bachelor's degree or something, right? But what I will say is that this is why I say that a bachelor's degree does help, or having a degree does help, because here's what the degree helps in play versus not having a degree and trying to get it without a degree. The benefit of having a degree, I will say, because I see it at my job all the time, people actually, a lot of jobs offer internships for college students. The problem is that now it's very hard. If you don't have any college experience or a college student, it's hard to get an internship. That's your way of getting degrees, and sometimes they even offer you a full-time position when you graduate. So I just want you to see what you're missing out on the table if you don't have a degree. That's not saying you can't do it. I literally just gave you a blueprint on how to do it. The thing is that you just have to really be focused. Like I'm dead serious. Due to you not wanting to go that path, you have to do a lot more like tedious work and learn things on your own. Because I mean, I ain't even gonna lie, a degree really didn't set me up for a cybersecurity career. Taught me it taught me typical networking protocols and etc. But honestly, you learn better on the job. And that's just the rule of it. Because you might do something when I was doing everything in college, and then I eventually got my first cybersecurity analyst position. Man, it was like a whole 180. It was just completely different, because what I was using in college, the problem is it's hard to update that curriculum so like frequently, especially if the job that you're working at is consistently updating the software technology or whatever. It just don't match up sometimes. But what I will say is that the fundamentals don't change. Some of my advice, I would definitely say take advantage of the fundamentals. Know your fundamentals, but also know what you're getting yourself into, because there's so many different branches inside cybersecurity. It is much more broad than you think. I mean, you can do networking, you can do freaking vulnerability management, incident response, digital forensics, freaking GRC, like compliance. You know what I mean? So there's so many different, and then now they bringing in AI security and different aspects, machine learning inside cybersecurity. There's so many different paths that you can take, and I don't want you to limit yourself, but I will say, do not be super picky when you first get in. My thing is that yes, and you can even do pen testing too, which is, people call them hackers and etc. You can do that as well. What I will say is that if you want to do something specifically inside cybersecurity, and let's say much more competitive. So for example, right, a lot of times when I talk to people and they want to get inside cybersecurity, everybody be like, oh, I want to be a hacker, I want to be a pen tester. Well, what I will say is that it is very difficult at first to get certain roles like that, because number one, they're not as plentiful in comparison to blue team, which means, defending the resources. But that doesn't mean that you can't do a blue team role first and then hop back over and then eventually get to the red team, which is attacking, right? Like a pen tester. So that's what I mean. Sometimes a lot of people, when I talk to them, they have like these ultra high standards. For example, yes, if you're starting off, I get it. Everybody got standards, but sometimes you got to turn them down a little bit. If you ain't got no income at all and the role is offering 50K, even 30K, bro, you need to take it. Like seriously. I'm not saying that it's the best, even if you need to, you know what I mean? Like work that and then on the weekends, work at Starbucks or something to make up for the bills, but you just need to get your foot in the door. A lot of times we get so caught up in, oh nah, I need to make at least 70K. How you gonna make 70K at least and you ain't got no experience? Be thankful somebody gave you a position. You ain't got no leverage, but yet you want to have so many expectations when you get in this game in cybersecurity, and that's not how it works. You really got to put the work in and you got to show your worth. Nobody's just going to give it to you. Nobody's just going this ain't like typically like McDonald's where they be like, all right, you're hired. Nah, you really gotta show that you dedicated and you gotta put in the work. You gotta, you know what I mean? You gotta do them labs, you gotta do study sessions, and you gotta actually read when you don't feel like reading. There's plenty of times where I don't feel like learning new material. But you know what? I understand that if not, you're gonna get left behind. And that's just the world that we live in today. You have to be consistent. So definitely get leverage in the game. Get some leverage. It's going to help you with different positions, but also you can also negotiate your salary in the future. When you're starting off, you shouldn't be, even if you can, of course, get as much as you can, but I'm not a big advocate of negotiating your first salary when you get in your first cyber role if you ain't got no experience prior. And another thing I want to say, because this is probably going to piss a lot of people off. You know how many people come up to me and be like, oh, I want to get inside cybersecurity, but it got to be fully remote. Bro, I'm not even fully remote. I'm a hybrid. That's what I mean. Like sometimes you got all these standards. People be having so many standards, but they not looking at the fact that, yo, like you have no leverage, but you got all these demands. Even if my job right now told me we got to go back in 5 days a week. All right, so be it. I'm coming in. Because one thing I will say is that I actually enjoy going into work. And the reason being is because that's my opportunity to network and learn more and get more hands-on experience with people and just learn more about the game. Because sometimes I feel like because of COVID, it actually showed, right? It did show that, okay, you're capable of working your job while at home. However, what I do realize too is that sometimes people took advantage of that situation. And I'm not saying everybody, because me, like, if the job is fully remote, of course, I would love that as well. But this is more targeted towards the people that started off in the beginning. How you going to demand that? Yes, they can do a remote, but it's like at this point, you need to take what you can get. So if they tell you they need you 5 days out of the week, I'm not saying you got to stay there. Just put in some work to get the experience and then dip out. You can always do that. You're not obligated to stay anywhere. My wife always told me, you're not a tree. You know what I mean? And it's so true. You literally are able to go anywhere you want. You know what I mean? So if you, in the future, because I get it, people got kids and, you got a wife and family and everything. I get all that. But at this point, sometimes you just got to force yourself to make things work. And if you're going in with that mindset, like, oh, I ain't going in the office, I'm staying home, I'm telling you, it's going to be much more difficult to get in. So sometimes you got to like give and take. Everything ain't always going to be perfect. You might not get the pay you want. You might not be at the location you want to be at, but you got to start somewhere and you got to check your ego at the door, because if not, it'll eat you alive in your career. And another thing I want to add on is just please take advantage of networking. LinkedIn is like one of the greatest resources you can do. Besides all that political bull, try to talk to people that's in the position that you want to be at. There's a lot of experts, a lot of friendly people, and even me, like I get overwhelmed sometimes in my inbox, but I try to respond to people as much as I can, because that's what matters. You never know who works for who. And sometimes there's some experts that you might connect with on LinkedIn and they looking for roles. And if you're a connection, you can directly inbox them and ask them what's up with the role. That's what I mean. Like, these are examples of what it's like and how you can get your game inside cybersecurity. And if you need a degree to get inside cyber, no, you absolutely do not need a degree. However, a degree does help. It gives you a little leverage. And sometimes what they try to do, a lot of times, especially now with HR, a lot of times, especially if you don't have experience, they try to be like, oh, because you don't have a bachelor's degree, we gonna skim a little off the top and try to cut a little bit. Not always, but sometimes it helps. But if you got the experience, that will trump any degree, any day, anywhere. So with that being said, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Like, share, subscribe, and comment. All right? And let me know what y'all think. And tell me a time when exactly, if you're going through the same situation, or if you had a degree, or just let me know something, because we all a team, and you know what I mean? I try to help out as much as I can. But with that being said, thank y'all for listening and tuning in. I'm gonna holla at y'all next Sunday at 12. Peace.